Well, they say everyone has a story before the sorry or the glory. And yeah, today I intend to mince out, just great insights from this public speaker, prominent, well-known public speaker. He's really dominated the moderation fields and the spaces. I mean, if we're talking about public speaking, then Georgie Ndirangu is a dude to talk about it.
Carry on with the intro. Carry on, don't let me stop you.
No, not really. But yeah, I mean, Georgie.
Thank you.
Georgie, first of all, I mean, for those who don't know, I was surprised for anyone who doesn't know you because, I mean, he's a prominent dude. But Georgie, he started as a journalist. No, first of all,
an accountant.
Yeah, an accountant because he has a background in finance. Then he branched out to media. Then now he's doing his own thing in public speaking. I mean, we'll get to him to tell us more about that. But welcome to this interview, Georgie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So maybe I can just start with, because I mean, allow me to use the word kingpin of moderation.
Oh.
Or rather, you sit with the kingpins. Was it really something that was like in you ever since you were young, and finance and media was just sort of a stepping stone to all this, or it's just something that kind of popped up along the way and the interest was built over time?
That is so perfect way to start.
Yeah.
We've been doing a lot of conversations with people, getting on podcasts, even on stages, all this where people ask you questions. So last week, I asked my mother, I was on stage, I was set to go on stage in about 5 minutes. So I just asked her, actually, when did you realize I was a good communicator? So I'm sure I'll probably post this on Instagram at some point. But she said, I think at some point you were in school, you were in church, and they asked you to speak, and you went on stage and you spoke. But she said, when I was in class 5, so 5th grade, I was always keen on trying to read the newspaper or reading it out loud. So that's when she knew I would be a communicator. So not necessarily a good one, just a communicator. Life happened where then you become a good one. But I think my parents probably saw it at a super young age, and they honed it. So that's when I'd say they knew. I knew when interviews started to happen, and after you do an interview, someone asks for your business card or your contacts, or you go to an event and you've been allowed to have, an interview with one person, and then they say, actually, I think we should do something. So that's when I knew. So now is when I'm starting to also realize a few other things, but I'm constantly knowing as we progress. Yeah, that I'm not too bad at the craft. Yeah.
Well, saying too bad as compared to what's happening right now, it's quite interesting. And I think that is what has informed the masterclass you have launched just not so long ago. And I mean, with the knowledge you have around public speaking, with the experience you have as well, when you couple it all up and you bring out this masterclass, what's the idea behind it? What's the intention as well behind it?
Okay, so I'll
First of all, you can even start, sorry to cut you short, you can even start with what informed starting a masterclass.
Yeah. So there were two things.
Yeah.
One, I always felt so guilty leaving the journalism world to get into, the development world and what I'm currently doing now. So I felt like I had abandoned the craft that made me me.
Okay.
So I always felt like I owed, 10 years back or something back to the decade that made me Georgie, right? So that was why I was kind of thinking about that. And then number two, there's constant because of social media and how social media works on different platforms, you're constantly either dishing out a lot of information or consuming it. So one of the demographics that we are constantly speaking to, my team and I, is young people, people that are transitioning from, let's say, school to a working environment, or people that are young professionals, or people that are also well established in the space, but they just need to really bust out. So there's a need for learning, right? The problem about the space or life as we have it, even the public speaking and moderating space, is three things. One, there's a lot of gatekeeping.
Yeah.
There's so much gatekeeping. You'd see someone on a stage around the world, but they don't even tell you how they do it. Like, how did they start? How do you even negotiate? How do you get a client? How do you even email someone outside the country, outside Nairobi, outside your locale, you know? So that was one. And then number two, people always feel like before they give you information, first of all, you need to pay a huge amount of money. I mean, granted, some people have their own ways within which they charge or they monetize, you know, their different platforms, but it doesn't have to be exorbitant. It could be favorable, right? So that's two. And then three, people feel like by the time they give you some, they say like, okay, now I'm happy to let you know, they're retiring. You know, that's why you see people write a book and then they say, oh, actually, let me give you all the lessons that I've had in my life. But we needed those lessons 20 years ago, you know what I mean? So time and success and people leaving an industry before they give you bits, I mean, those days are well behind us. So if you can give as much info as possible to cut the time for people that I maybe took 10 years, some person maybe might take a day. To get as much info.
Very true.
If you can do that, well and good, but it's also on the consumer to know what they're trying to get. So those are the three things: gatekeeping, time, and I mean what people perceive as legacy. So that was the rationale for the masterclass.
And it's interesting you mentioned gatekeeping, because it's always been a very huge problem, especially when it comes to tutoring your juniors and everything. You mentioned the experience has been built in like 10 years. And I'm assuming this is also, it's coupled up with the time you're also in media.
I would say 34 years, 35 years. I mean, it's a lot of experience.
So, I mean, do you plan to, even as you teach through the masterclass, even as you train, do you have sort of, we call them shadow learners, people who just go to you, go with you to the ground, get to see what you're doing, probably even train them and mentor them to be future Georges, or is it just solely masterclass style, engage with me online, then you'll be good to go?
So the bit on shadowing on ground has not been formalized, but once in a while, also because of the nature of the events, sometimes you can't have someone else join just by virtue of maybe security or registration, things like that. So it's not been formalized, but I normally invite people, if you're able to, join. Come see how we do behind the scenes. Come see how we prepare, how we script, how we decide who's going to sit where, how the questions are going to be decided, because I also do a lot of program design before it's implemented on ground, or prepare an event 4 months, 5 months before. So you're always welcome. I mean, I try as much as possible, and the team tries as much as possible for us to know what information is sensitive, what other people are privy to, and that happens within that space. But the masterclass, as is on the website, is fully recorded. It's uploaded, right? It's masterclass style. But there are constantly messages for people asking, you know, how can we do this? How can we do this? So as much as there's a masterclass, as much as there's this informal where you can go on ground, there's constant questions, and one question is not the same as the other, where they say, okay, how can I do this? And how can I do this? And not saying that I have a silver bullet, but I can just give you perspective. So that always happens every time. And of course, we have the mentorship series, where we just let a lot of young people come. They ask as many questions as they can, you know, pro bono, and they just get as much info as they can, and then they see how they're going to utilize it. So that's the way. That last bit has not been formalized yet. It's tough. It's tough to to formalize that.
I mean, totally understandable. And again, it's very subject to time and, you know, just progress. You've mentioned being in the planning you know, team before you even become, you know, the Georgie, the host of this event. I'm an MC myself.
Yeah.
And I also relate to that, you know, just being behind the scenes, planning for what you want to work for you, even as you go on stage.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm thinking of the past event, probably the Connect Africa you were hosting. I think, was it the entire
Now that
period?
was helping with the design. I wasn't hosting.
Right.
I didn't host that one.
You didn't host
I didn't host it.
All right, then. Probably the latest big event you had. Kindly take me through just a normal Georgie's let me call it pre-production process.
Right.
From probably the call to standing on stage.
Right. For example, which one? Mongolia.
Yeah.
Mongolia would be nice, right? Because there's a lot more layers to go through.
Yeah.
One, you're told the United Nations International Trade Center says we're going to have this event in Mongolia in, let's say, September. They tell you 5, 6, 7 months in advance.
Yeah.
So what happens is you know the expected outcome because you've been working on this event yearly. And that's another thing for people to know. If it's something that's yearly, then you can almost preempt what kind of conversations will be had. So in the International Trade Center is basically people understanding how countries trade, and the fact that it's in Mongolia means that they want to know how different continents also trade with each other, and you know, vice versa. So they tell you 7 months in advance. Then you start saying, okay, we have a bit of a skeleton. It's going to be a 2 or 3 day forum. Yeah. So you have maybe an opening remark where you have, let's say, the president, for example, the president of Mongolia, the president of this, the president of this. So you go from understanding the skeleton for all 3 days.
Right.
Then you ask, what is your role on the actual day, so that you also know when you're doing program design.
Right.
So you think about that. You think about the languages that you're going to speak in, because Mongolia, English is number 5.
Yeah.
There's Russian, French, Chinese, Mongolian, or native language, and then now English. So you think about that, and then you now, as you script, you decide how much visibility you want for the language itself, or the personalities, and then you guys start now deciding, okay, whom do you think would fit the bill? And you start sending invites to ask about their availability. Yeah. So that happens, but the availability is now based on their expertise. Are they relevant for this particular segment? So you can imagine if it's a 2 or 3 day summit, you have maybe 5 different sessions per day. 5 sessions, 1 session needs 4 people. So you need about 20 people. So that's about 60 people for a 3 day. And you have to lock their times, check whether they're available. Yeah. And by virtue of the kind of conversations you want to have, they are high profile, right?
And also assuming you're not doing a background check on every one of them.
You have to do background checks. You have to see what they spoke about before. You have to see whether they're still talking or they stopped. And then you now also, members of the Fourth Estate, so journalists, bloggers, trade experts, consultants, you have to also factor all of those in, because a lot of people don't think about, they think about them last mile, right? But they have to be factored in at the beginning, so that you also know, do you need media partners? Do you need people to disseminate the information prior? Do you need a press briefing before? What's it called? Like a conference, a press conference before? And then you now work on the technical team, or who do you need on ground? So you kind of map that out, invoicing, things like that happen way before. Of course, within the UN system, they cater for most of that. You only come in for the program part, but you can advise. You can say, yeah, we've worked with these particular people. I feel like they would do a nice piece. So that's what program design looks like. And then on the days that lead up to that, you then tighten and refine it as much as possible. Don't forget visas. You need to get, approvals, letters of invitation, all those things that might take even so long. So that's what that looks like.
So it's not as easy as, just checking where you are, traveling, stepping on stage. And
no, not at all, not at all. You need to really be deliberate. And I think that's what also separates people that just want to show up as a superstar and do the job.
Very true.
Or you want to really be involved. And then when you get on stage, you know what you're saying because you were part of the full process. One of the questions that people always ask me, let's say, like, for example, you go to like a doctor practitioner's event, or you go to an agricultural event or climate summit, and people ask, so how do you know what you're saying? Like the answer is pretty simple, like research, but not overnight research. It's like, because a lot of people do, you do whatever you need to do, then you're like, oh snap, I have 2 days to go for this event, let me start now preparing. No.
Which you never even get enough.
You don't get enough, or you miss something, because you need to also look at the program, ask as many questions. People don't also ask, you ask the organizers questions, ask what about this, how is the setup going to look, who's going to talk, who's going to be in the audience, things like that. So it's not microwave, no.
Oh, I love it. And you've mentioned languages.
Yeah.
And Georgie, I know, being in Rwanda for a while, how many years?
8
years in Rwanda.
8 years, yeah.
I reckon you have like polished Kenya-Rwanda.
Yes, polished is relative, but my Kenya-Rwanda is good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And I also know there's some bit of French.
Yeah, splash.
Yeah. So is it always like a very key component that a good public speaker should have, especially now for you, now that you go to different nations? First of all, you can even start with how many do you know as of now?
So English. No, in order of how I know them, right?
All right, yeah.
English.
All right.
Fluently. Kiswahili fluently. Kenya-Rwanda and Kikuyu.
All right.
Almost the same level.
Interesting.
And then French.
All right.
That's it. So 5. I'm guessing that's 5. But now, of course, because of the Agikuyu, so Embu, Meru, you can kind of catch what's being said. Yeah. But before, a lot of people used to have put a lot of weight on languages because there were not so many interventions as there are now. There were not so many interpreters. There were not so many AI apps that could just quickly translate the language for you. So now you're seeing, I've seen now people even have a campaign against Duolingo. They're saying, it teaches us things that we're not practicing in real life.
True,
you know what I mean? And so I've utilized them, and sometimes it's super helpful because some people who, let's say like for example in the African Union space, or something that you're going to moderate in West Africa, North Africa, or you name it, even outside the continent, they always ask, we're going to have some Francophone speakers or some Lusophone people in the audience. How's your... And sometimes you're like, it's not that good. I wouldn't trust me with a different language, I'd prefer if we have 2 moderators, maybe one who can speak Portuguese or Italian, Spanish or French. So there has been some instances where you're even left out because you don't speak the language. Yeah. So I would say if you're able to, well and good. If not, then you have to do maybe some bit more work, like get a translating device and prep a lot more, things like that. So just make sure everyone's covered.
What I'm gathering is it kind of gives you an edge as compared to other moderators.
Absolutely, yeah. I've seen a lot of people who know a lot of languages and they shine. Especially if they can communicate as clearly and crisp across all languages. They really do so well. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Allow me to take you back, and this is probably going to take you a minute, to the very memorable let's say events or just convocation you had, and what stood out from that, because I'm thinking it's out of a very memorable thing that you anchor your strong points on, or your strongest just punchlines and operations, and probably just you can just take me through the one that was like, woo!
I will never forget that.
Exactly. Up to today. And probably, did it also come with very strong connections that, have given you, rather open doors for you in different spaces?
Right. So I think the one that I've spoken about the most is the moderating of the presidents. That's I think... I think there were 8. Have I ever had anyone? No, the next time there were that many were maybe 3 or 4. But that one was... The 8 heads of state is the one that have made so much noise about. I mean, I'm super proud about it, But also because a lot of people don't know that it's someone who took a chance on me.
Oh, really?
At that time, during Smart Africa. It was just primarily based on some interviews we had before and some moderating gigs we had before. So they called a few days and they said, We need you on stage. So that happens. And I've told the story a million times. But after the event happened so while we were on stage, one of the people that was a panelist was the president of Mali. He had just left the country, he had just left Mali, but there was some bit of unrest, right, in Mali.
Okay.
While we were on the stage, I think there was wind that the unrest had escalated in the country. So one of the things that the president said, I think he was probably signaled or something, but because it was a conversation on digital infrastructure and tech and how different countries were going to possibly just pick up different blueprints within the tech space to elevate their countries, it was an ICT conversation, nothing else, you know?
Yeah.
So the president of Mali then, during one of my questions to him, he actually said he wanted to pose a question to the rest of the presidents on stage and to the audience.
Right.
And mind you, it's a very diverse audience, different countries all over the world, and Africa very heavily represented. And he says, I don't even know why we're talking about ICT now, while there are people back in Mali dying. And, you know, there's been so much unrest and there's civil war in different countries and different people normally fight and And you could kind of see the panelists' body language shift, yeah. Right? Like, because they are uncomfortable. Like, we're not here to discuss that.
For that serious issue, yeah.
There was a place for that conversation, and it needed to be had.
Okay.
But I think the timing was a bit, so you could kind of see it. And your role as a moderator as well, I mean, you've not done the course, but you need to be a body language expert.
Very true.
And at that point, I remember just picking, because my French, again, he was speaking, and you kind of like wait for the right time, you wait for the right time on the interpreting device, and then then I interrupted.
Okay.
And I kind of cut and said, you know, we would really love to take this on, but I knew that even after there was a session after that was going to talk about, you know, sustainable societies and things like. So there was a place to have that heavy conversation.
Okay.
And time was also running out. So when I interjected, I just kindly requested, you know, if we could just have it in its entirety or in a separate discussion where we could now properly unpack and make sure everyone was fine. So that happens. I interrupted him. And so we finish, everything happens well, and then the presidents leave, the session's done, now we're going for lunch. While we're going for lunch, one renowned photographer, Emmanuel Jambo, we're walking for lunch, and then someone just comes up and says, hey, hi, and then I say, he asks, I think, I can't remember where he was from, but he asks, hi, I don't know, let's say like Malik, let's say, and you are? I said, George. Emmanuel said, you don't know him? He's the man who interrupted the president.
Yeah.
So in my head, it clocked till today. If I was ever to write a book, it would be The Man Who Interrupted the President as the title. But I told...
You better mark that.
Yeah. And I told Emmanuel, like, are you okay with me using this? He just said it, you know, But The Man Who Interrupted the President would be like what I would say is the thing that I will never forget that. And just because of that, even by virtue of you interjecting when a president is speaking is unheard of. You know, as speakers, when you're on the stage, especially when you have a high-profile person sitting next to you, you tend to kind of shrink or not challenge or things like that. You know, just let them speak and then you speak. Respectfully also, because Africans, you know, we respect first. So that really changed people's perspective, and it really opened a lot of doors. People said, I mean, he can clearly handle a conversation, and from there things just change.
It's smooth.
Things change, not smooth, but things change.
I mean, doors were opened.
Doors opened, the windows too.
Very much. I mean, then opportunities came in in the right amount, and I'm a great believer of a yin and yang. You can never have one without the other.
True.
And so, I mean, if you give us your best, then what was your worst? The one that you literally, you know,
My mind has this weird thing where it clears, it erases bad memories. That's why even when, like, as a child, someone asks you, what's your best memory as a child? You just pick out the ones where you're going to buy chips and sausages in town. What's a bad one? I haven't thought about that one. But I know it definitely must involve either a bad time or something that didn't happen. But let me marinate on that one. Yeah, that's a really, really good question.
No problem. And you've mentioned, I was trying to kind of take you to a head of state that I reckon you admire.
Yeah.
And you failed to mention him. So President Paul Kagame.
Yeah.
Over the 8 years you've been in Rwanda, you've met him not once.
Yeah, true.
And I remember when you were 4 years into living in Rwanda, you were a spoken word artist. I don't want to call you a spoken word artist.
Some research.
But you had a spoken word. And actually, I wrote a quote you used.
Okay.
You said,
oh boy.
H.E. Paul Kagame has been more of a father figure than most fathers I know. A father of many, a father of sons, a father of expatriates and prodigal sons and Kenyan sons and Ugandan sons and daughters.
Wow. Was that what I said?
Yeah, that's what you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a poet too. Yeah.
So, I mean, is it that you hold President Kagame in such high regard, or it's just that you just love him? Or, I mean, what informed this? Because it's very interesting. You come from Kenya and you're the one praising the president of a foreign nation. Yeah.
Okay, so Rwanda and Kagame there's always very polarizing sentiments about either. So there's a lot of love, there's a lot of admiration, there's a lot, people are not understanding a few things. Some people dislike what's happening in one or two things.
Okay.
So everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But I was in Rwanda for a very long time, and within that time, I went to Rwanda by bus. So the place that I remember my first touch point with the country was the taxi park.
Wow.
Where the buses used to settle, and then you get out and you start your journey.
Yeah.
That's how mine started. And going back even to that same taxi park, every time, let's say I'm there, it's such a different place. Like, I don't recognize this. Like, things have changed so much.
Yeah.
And that's in such a short span of time.
Okay.
Such a short time. And what I have for President Paul Kagame is respect.
Right.
I respect him, and I respect that people see him as what he's doing. Like, people respect the progress.
Yeah.
And it speaks for itself. Whether you like a person or not, whether you respect them or not, if someone builds a studio or a house, whether your personal feelings towards the person and the thing are so separate, you know?
Yeah.
If there's a building, there's a building. There's no, I don't like this building. It's a good building, you know, if that.
Yeah.
So what I've seen over time is things just popping up. And whether you like a person or not, whether you admire a person or not, you cannot deny what's happening.
Okay.
You know, on ground. And I mean, there's a lot of politics, and I don't mean to sound tone deaf because of the geopolitics in the region. And every country has, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, DRC, you name it. Everyone have how they relate with each other. So I cannot speak for geopolitics in general. But what you can see is a lot of countries going, oh gosh, they have a stadium, another stadium, or a 40,000 seater stadium. You know, things that have been mentioned in different manifestos for time and time and time are being done like it's nothing in in other countries. So that's what the admiration is, and he expresses clearly what he hopes for the country, you know, and a lot of what he said is actualized. So I think people really see that and go, you know, like they care about the citizens so much. And if you speak to a good number of Rwandans, they also know that, you know, like our leading administration cares for us, you know. So of course there's what happened in '94, and you know, the different layers of technicalities and complexities that you as a different nationality have absolutely no understanding about, and you have to also respect that. You don't know what happened, so you can't speak for the country. You just let it, you do your own So that's what I feel like that's what I feel now for Rwanda and the president.
And the president.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Do you still have the spoken word skills?
Sure.
Once in a while, do you have pieces?
There's a guy in Nairobi called Goofy.
Goofy Docs, I know.
Yeah, Goofy Docs. Yeah. So in his previous presentation, I remember we were speaking and I was going to do a piece on the stage. Yeah. But then there was another event that came up. But I would really love to do that. I mean, life is what you do. Like, you do whatever you want. You know?
Because I mean, I also do some spoken word pieces. Yeah.
Don't even get me started on your public profile, because you want to be out there but in there. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember we used to do some open mic
at Wapi
events, at KNT.
Oh.
And also the museum.
So theater.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's part of what we love.
Yeah.
Back to you, Georgie. It's
really well done. Yeah.
With moderation, with public speaking, and you telling me how it has kind of, just grown and kind of metamorphosized to what you're doing right now, to even now teaching others. There's also the aspect of creating change through it, communicating in just creating change, in forcing conversations into places that conversation is never had, to bringing new aspects into places that probably we've been having very stale modules and systems. And would you say you've had the platform to do so, or is there any plan to speak towards change as Georgie the moderator?
You know, one of the things about change or systemic shifts is it's not a switch on, switch off.
Right.
It has to happen gradually and consistently over time, and at a certain level where people feel like this is the highest professional level, and they're saying that you need to shift your mentality around a few things. So I would say that the systemic shift happens consistently and deliberately over a long period of time, where people say that is now the norm. You know?
Yeah.
There was an event that was convened by the American Chamber, at the American Embassy, and they invited creatives, right, for creative economy.
Oh yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Mark Masai was there, and Mark is, he's a brilliant guy, one of the best of our time, you know. Yeah. And we were saying hi, and he said, Georgie, that masterclass, oh my days. Because obviously, most of the moderators in the space have thought about it. And there are a lot of people who are more experienced than me. They've done their time. Yeah. They've met more people than me. They've met all this, they've really done their time. Yeah. How did I come into the space and make something that they can also utilize? Yeah. Actually, even the first person that bought the course, or like went behind the paywall to get the modules, was a really big moderator in SA. That was the first person. Wow. Called Gugu. I will never forget Gugu, and she just said, "Hey, I got your course. I really want to go through it and dig it, And you're like, but you've been doing this for time. Why would you? Like, yeah. You think you do know, but it's so that's what I would say about like a systemic shift. It's those who know want to get more, and those who don't know now get exposed to a different way of doing things and a different way of speaking. And a lot of people think that even what we're doing is only for moderators, journalists, public speakers. No, it's for anyone that wants to hold a microphone or get on a stage and know how to speak, know how to ask a question, know how to introduce themselves, know how to, even in something as small as a book club or a marriage ceremony where you just talk to the crowd and say, my name is, and you're really super confident. That's the aim. The overall goal is as simple as, I really would love for Africans to take up spaces loudly. Like you just show up and people know, oof, that one is a good speaker. That's a good orator. Where did you study? Harvard, the London School of Economics? No. I've never left the continent. I've been here, but I know what I'm saying because I took my time to understand how to say it. So that's the That's the general.
Right.
Yeah.
So yours is dominating the African space as an African.
No, there's no such
Or
thing.
rather, dominating the global space as an African.
Whatever stage you take, we had it in one of the modules where we say, you take over the world one stage at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Georgie. You've mentioned a book club, and I know you're in one.
Yes.
Do you have such conversations? Do you kind of trigger such conversations on how will we then change things? And for example, this is a book club, so is it more of those? How can we engage more people into loving literature? I mean, is it also a conversation in that book club?
Yeah, so 2 conversations happen in the book club.
Yeah.
One is we try, it's even in the bio of Escape Book Club KE, we try to make reading fun. That's it. Everyone reads, everyone hangs out, everyone does fun stuff. What if you did all of them together? You know? So you decide if you're going to paint, you paint a character in the book at your book reads, and then you do a book review, something like that. So we kind of try, you know, we try and mix it up. And also you don't want people to be like, oh God, we're going for another thing where we sit down and
just go through pages.
Go through pages. So what if you surprise them with like the author comes in as well, and you get to hear from the author. So we try and shift things around. So that's one. 2, because of what we want for people to just kind of be loud out there, or like just show up and, you know, don't be shy. It's okay to be shy, but, you know, just work towards presenting yourself. We've split into groups where every month there's a certain group that is responsible for the location, what we're going to discuss, what book we're going to discuss, what activity is going to happen. So that group then also selects who's going to speak. Okay. And most of the time it's shifted around so that who spoke last time doesn't speak this, so they kind of head. And we've seen people really just get out of their shell and they're speaking more. Of course, it's an intimate space, 20, 25 people, but you're seeing more people speak, which, I mean, a win is a win. A win is a win. Yeah.
And which book are you on right now?
Confessions of Nairobi Women, Part 1.
Really good. It's a good series.
Yeah.
I want to hop on that, but first I'm on Nairobi Noah. So
okay.
Until I get done with that.
Then you jump for the other one. Yeah.
Now, Georgie, with storytelling, I know you're a good storyteller.
Thank you.
And it's something that I believe has been in you ever since you joined the journalism space. And where you are right now, how different is it from when you were Georgie the journalist? And even, you can even break it down from CNBC, BBC, and now Georgie the moderator. How has storytelling changed across those different spectrums?
That's interesting. At the beginning, I think with CNBC, so I was on TV10 before. Yeah. And on TV10 in Rwanda, yeah. So on TV10, I think just by virtue of you, first of all, getting into the space, it was mostly, you're already coming into a set template, a set way of doing things. So you just kind of churn out what you're told or what you prepare. While at CNBC, I moved then to become senior presenter producer, where you're also working with, you know, some of the junior journalists or some of the people that are coming into the space or into the newsroom, and you're kind of saying, okay, we could try do this, we could try do this. I had a show as well called Doing Business in Rwanda, which talked about the kind of investments that were coming into the space. So you figure out your way of creatively telling these stories. And then now with BBC, when we joined, actually, I remember the editor saying, you need to unlearn everything and relearn how stories are told, you know, across the world. And with that, then there's still the element of editorial coming from, you know, your editor, but we had our input in a lot of things that were happening in the space. And you're even, when you're commissioned to go to a different country, and it's what you do while you're on ground that kind of separates you from anyone else that's going to do. You could go to, have you ever been in a situation where you're 3 media houses or 4 media houses in one space? And you guys look at the pieces that come at prime time at 9 p.m. and you're like, are we at the same place?
Like, why did I go with this angle?
And this one went in a super creative angle, and then so that then differentiates you as a storyteller. one of the most interesting realizations was when COVID happened. Sadly, of course, there were a lot of fatalities. When COVID happened, most media houses, or most people even who are doing what we do, were told, okay, we're going to give it a while, just go home, we'll let you know when to come back. But at the BBC, they said, actually, we would like you and 2, 3, 4, 5 other people to join this team where we'll do creative storytelling around COVID.
Okay.
So at some point we were like, no, we want to go relax as well. But then you realize how much of the perception, if we have Georgie, and it was Georgie, Sharon, Ian, I can't remember who else, but we would then be the guys telling the stories, and we were because we were telling it differently. So we tell you how COVID has affected, this. So that's how that's how differently things have been. And of course I carried that even after. Now things have transitioned to social media where you can tell your own story regardless of whether you're tied to a brand or not, or tied to a media house or not. You can still put your story out. Of course, fact checking and all journalism steps considered. That's how things
so the journalism DNA is still there, just
heavily.
The space is kind of different.
Yes, it's still there heavily. I think even when you go on my Twitter, it's Georgie the journalist. There's maybe 1 or 2 jokes, but it's just facts and fact checking and a lot of info and just new things that have popped up, questioning a few things like that. Which
makes me remember, for your social media platforms, it has a different identity on Georgie. When I go to Twitter, I won't experience the Georgie I've seen on IG.
No.
I won't see the Georgie I've seen probably on LinkedIn.
Almost
I even realized you're on Snapchat.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it in one of your interviews.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get to balance content across all different platforms? So how do you just segment it? So Snapchat, I think at the time, was collecting memories, right? And chatting, and so Snapchat served its purpose. It's like MiG-33, for example. So I guess I don't even know how to delete an account there. The millennial in me is shaking right now. So Instagram is possibly my most active, right? Super active because it's kind of like daily updates, things like that. If you think about it, there's nowhere else where you can give daily updates. And I don't want to do that on Twitter, right? People on Twitter are like, no, maybe don't. We don't know you for that. We don't want you to tell us, how, I don't know, your car got messed up because of 1, 2, 3. No, we don't want to hear that. So Twitter is very serious. Twitter is like it's like, when you get a mugshot, bio picture, and you're like this, that's Twitter. Where you come, have proper conversations, and your journalism, the journalism in you just thrives textually. Another one, LinkedIn, is super interesting because it's a kind of a mix. So LinkedIn allows you to just almost say anything, as long as it's within the professional space and what you do. LinkedIn just has a really interesting and amazing audience. And now, for short-form content, which is almost really random, or you can just... TikTok is brilliant. Very true.
It's so brilliant. I don't even know how... I'm just getting... So now... But now Instagram and all these others, you go and then you post something and you kind of wait and see, okay, what's the engagement like? Or what are people leaning more towards? But TikTok, you just go post something and leave. You come back, you're like... what are all these people commenting about? So I think I'm seeing so many different things and uptake differently. It's constantly learning.
Interesting. Now let's take the professional cloak of you and just get to know how Georgie kind of keeps himself grounded. What keeps you sane? I mean, I see you have this thing where you work out, is it dancing and everything? I won't preempt what I know. Just go.
I think slowly as you get older, and I'm not even that old. So, but as you continue to add a year, 2 years, you realize that happiness is really drawn away from you because of bills, because of things, responsibilities, all of that. But if you can constantly return, get back to the basics, get back to what made you happy in the first place, the kind of things that just make you, you know, just feel young or vibrant, you'd really go, you really go a long way in even returning, you know, like in this Kiswahili we say kurudishia mwili shukrani, where you do things that now make you happy, and that happiness takes you even through the times when you're not so happy, or when you're down or feeling not too motivated. So working out, physical activity in any form, so sports, running, dance, even just indoor games, you know, things like that. I really love to do a lot of those. And our friends now, like, I think with the way our friendships have been kind of structured, or like how even a lot of friends gravitate towards each other, is that we have a lot of competition amongst each other, where if someone knows how to play tennis, it's like, you don't know how to play tennis that well. Let me show you, you know? So which also, like, that competition, that camaraderie, it's super positive. You know, we just try to make each other better, but you're also working out, you know, so your health comes first. So that grounds me in that way. My family, so whatever I put out on social media, I always think, if my mother saw this, what would she think? That's one of the things that always guides what I put out. Will she be proud? Will she be embarrassed? Will she be shocked? So that helps me with that. And of course, God. I'm a firm believer in God, and that nothing happens by chance. So those three things.
Interesting. Is it one of those staunch believers, or you just have that, you know, just respect for Christ? And
I think respect is more like it, because people always ask, are you religious or spiritual? You know, but I don't know whether it's one or either, because I don't know why we have to be in a box.
No line should be drawn there, exactly.
But I mean, I'm a grown-up Christian in a Christian home, and, you know, went to school, went to Sunday school, went to, you know, it was called Gideon's, the youth, which I was told now I'm no longer part of the youth. Gosh, I have one more year before I'm out of the youth bracket. And so I think just raised in church, you know, so now every time, even on Sunday, you wake up at 9, you're like, and I'm in my 30s, like, I'm still like, oh gosh, you know, like, but I think that's just being raised in church.
And before the cameras went live, you mentioned something around financial literacy. Now that you mentioned your mom, and you said something around how she is kind of shown you a few things, and kind of just taken you through the journey of financial literacy. Maybe even before you talk about how well tailored it is in you or in your finances.
Not yet. Don't get people to rob me.
You'll get to that. How big or how fat is your check right now, probably in terms of moderation? And as you say, as you give me details on that, you can just tell me how financial literacy has helped you kind of manage it and probably utilize it in the...
Let me tell you, journalists are diplomats. If you want me to jump around the hoops, I'll do it at this particular point. Every time money is brought up, guys are like, oh no, you know, no,
it's not much.
It's not bad, But when we were starting off within the moderation space, I had no idea how to price it. When I came back to Kenya, I had this idea on what moderators should be paid. But I came back, and then I quickly realized I had very little connections to the network, the moderation network in the country. And my first gig was probably 75,000 Kenya shillings, where the manager wanted to take 25%. So you end up with like maybe 40K or something like that. But I was grateful, because it was a good event. It was a good event, and with that you then cement your place in the. So that happened. A lot of 75s and a lot of 25% on the 75s happened over time, maybe 3-4 months, and then later you're like, actually, thank you so much for the assistance. You know, I'll pick it up from here. And of course, the person also got busy, which I was happy about. So it went from that. That was maybe like, let's say $300, $400. we've had checks that go all the way till $10,000. Sometimes it comes to $2,000 depending. Right. Sometimes they just need you to consult on something on the program. Sometimes they need you for 1 hour, but not moderating, just hosting, emceeing. Sometimes they want you to just come in, moderate, and leave. So to be honest, it ranges. So, but I do know that the cutoff, maybe minimum cutoff, also because of the team that also manages me, they say maybe within, depending on the type of engagement, they say, no, you can't go below this particular line.
$20,000. That's nice. That's a good
I've never gotten a $20,000 paycheck, by the way. Never. But God willing, maybe that's coming. That's coming soon. Yeah, but the industry is rife. There's a lot of money in the space.
Right. And has financial literacy kind of helped?
Yeah. So what we do, what I personally do as 9-to-5 is consultancy. So a lot of people don't know that. Right? People say, oh, is the masterclass the thing you do? I mean, we did that and it's on the website, but 9-to-5 is consultancy with a few organizations where you come in and give strategic advice on a few of the things that they want to execute on ground. Or maybe the kind of thinking across working with different demographics, young people, policymakers, stakeholders, you name it. So consulting is my 9-to-5. Financial literacy comes in when you realize the 9-to-5 pays you your salary, and you need to know that anything else that you do that brings in money is not money that you should ideally have planned to use. So it's you consider it like, I hadn't planned for this. This is money that's coming in as extra. So you pinch maybe some of it to like kind of maybe pay for some of the expenses that happened preparing for that engagement. Let's say if you were paid $2,000 to go moderate something for climate. You say, you know, fuel, maybe if you needed to buy a suit or you name it, to take out $500. Then the $1,500 that's left, invest it. Take it away. So I think financial literacy is as basic as if you don't see your money, you're not going to use it. Move it away. Move it away from you as far as possible. And if money is coming that you're not accounted for, you can't all of a sudden just find use for it. Move it away. I was saying the joke earlier where my mom started putting cash in our sacco for me, and even my little brother and my sister, it was 1,000 shillings. So that's about maybe $10 at the time, $10 per month. And by the time we were old enough to now take the account, she said, there were probably like 100,000 in there, and you're like, oh, I have money, you know. And I was still in uni, in high school, I think, getting into uni. And then she said, no, that money is not to be touched. You have to build this into a huge sum of money. And that's what's happened over time. So we were discussing yesterday, and I was telling her the amount I have, and you know, it's almost close to what she has, and she's like, can you grow up, please? We can't have the same, like I was on a teacher's salary, and you know, this is what we do, and she managed to get 1 or 2 things, and so I should have a lot more money. I don't have 3 kids. I don't have, you know, things like maybe some of the things that drew out cash that she needed, like pay for uni for us and things like that, get a house, get land, build all those things. I have none of that. And I'm happy that we are on this. She said, get your money up, stop. So financial literacy looks like that. It's understanding that while you're young and can move around, don't spend all your money. Just save for a time when you will not be able to move around, but you will need money. It will be money out. Now you have money in, money in, money in everywhere. But there'll come a time when the money in will just be a tiny stream. And you need to really bank on what you had accumulated the last 40 years.
Interesting. There's a quote in the financial spaces, save your money now so that it can save you later.
I like that.
As we wind up, I want to know if you'd be given a chance to do this all over again. What would you do different?
That's a really good question. Someone asked some other time, you wake up and you're, let's say, 15 or 16, 18, with all the knowledge that you've accumulated now, what would you do differently? And I remember one of the most interesting answers was, let's say, like if you woke up and it was the year 2000, for example, the most interesting answer to me at the time was, the person said, I would just go to the lottery. I would place 1 million or 10 million on the country that would win the World Cup. And I would triple, quadruple my money immediately, you know? So I found that so interesting because a lot of people were saying, no, you know, I would start learning. And the person just said, nah, I just bet on the winning country because I already know who it is, you know? So I think all that to say, which kind of draws onto, like sometimes we see things so complicated, but it's pretty easy. If I was to go back in time with the same knowledge that I have now, probably just really futuristically thinking, I know artificial intelligence is taking over the space, or at least has infiltrated some spaces. I know one of the best jobs right now is communications and finance and telling people where to put their money. I know politics is also really skewed on what people feel about that. So I would really be deliberate about, you know, where I would kind of put my energy. In the space where I am, the things that I would kind of do differently is maybe learn 3 more languages. And just try to do this quicker. And now split into social media quicker. You know, so that's probably what I would do maybe differently.
And also, I mean, allow me to ask you this. Will it also do something to your relationships? I'm talking about romantic ones.
If I was...
will they be as different as they are right now?
That's a very interesting question because I feel like currently what I'm doing or who I'm with right now...
You're with someone right now?
Yes, we just started dating not so long ago.
Many hearts will be broken.
Hearing
that, by the way.
But I feel like my age and what I'm doing now makes sense.
But it had to take like a series of conversations, a series of relationships, and a series of learnings to get to where you are now. I don't think, even like now that's the part where God comes in, because like you're not given something that you're not ready for. And sometimes you feel like, no,
this is the one, and you fight for it, and then life says, this was just preparing you for something else. So I feel like it's exactly how it should be right now. I'm pretty happy with my person now. She's a good... she's good for now. She's good for the time I'm at now.
And
fantastic. Hopefully long.
Fantastic. Georgie, I don't know if you look at the camera or just say it. You mentioned you always do something on your birthday. It's in August. So I mean, looking at the camera, what is it? And you couple up that with what next for Georgie?
Okay. So, my birthday is on, I could tell he's rolling. So now we're good. My birthday is on August 30th. I'm a Virgo, extremely happy about that. Virgos are wild and just love to do things a certain way. I'll be turning a year older, and I always feel like I need to celebrate myself, even when no one does. I make it everyone's point to celebrate that particular day. So I had mentioned that I had promised myself that this year I would launch 2 things, a product and a service. So the service is out in the space, the masterclass. But hoping to have a product out into the market. God willing, it will happen by that time. I'm not going to tell you.
Georgie. All right then.
I'm not going to tell you what it is. But let's just wait. August is not that far, you know. August is not that far, so hopefully it will be ready by that time.
And the book as well?
No, not yet. Not yet. I can't even. To be fair, for the book. For the book, there's been a few chapters that I've kind of written the titles. Like what I want the title to be, you know, chapter this, chapter 33, which was my best year. So I know what's there and things like that. But nah, the book not yet, not yet. But my problem is when I lock down something, it has to happen. That's why I don't like taking on projects that I know I can't see them the full length, because I get super obsessed about making things work.
All right then, that was Georgie Ndirangu, the man, the myth. And it was just an interesting conversation knowing just the field of public speaking and moderation, and just knowing something extra about you far from the Georgie we know, handling the mic. Yeah, so catch up with him on his masterclass. Really interesting conversations and insights on that platform. And I mean, also follow him on his socials. He has some interesting things as well. That's it. Adios.